Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a gear change show here on February 10th, 2024. Here is episode 511. I think it's the 20th overall for the year, and I believe it's the 32nd video for the year. So we're about 8 off. Actually, we're about 9 off from the year's total, which isn't bad. We did good to start out. I didn't do any gameplay recording because I didn't want to. I keep on putting this off, and I'm terribly sorry. But I wanted to focus on the gear change though. So I wanted to talk about steering wheels and racing. So when racing started to come out in the early 1900s, and racing has been around since, well, I think since like 1890 to 1905, it's been around. Racing wheels were just considered, most racing wheels were like four-spoke wheels, wood rim. Some of them actually had controls on them, like to advance and slow down, slow down the ignition. I could have said the other word, but unfortunately, I would have this video would have gotten flagged for offensive language. For those of you in the car culture, will know what word I'm going to use. It starts with R, and it's kind of a socially unacceptable word to call somebody who's with a learning difference. Of course, I can't unfortunately say it anymore because I don't want to get flagged. So there was always a lever for to advance the timing of the ignition and to slow down the timing, or to reduce the timing of the ignition. A lot of people think that they could advance. A lot of people thought that modern racing wheels kind of can do all that stuff, but it was in and around the early 1900s. I don't think it was until and then I think all steering wheels used to be metal. The spokes used to be metal. The column used to be metal. Always used to be metal. A thick, long pole of steel. To the driving wheels, and it was unassisted mostly because the wheels weren't all that heavy. I mean, it was wood and some rubber tire. You really had to have some elbow grease to turn it. I don't think racing wheels really started to get advanced. I'm gonna say the 1970s, because that's when teams would put the radio button, and 70s, late 80s. That's when they put the radio button, and they'd also put maybe the radio button, and maybe to start the car, to flash the headlights or something like that. I don't think modern steering wheels started to get really high tech until, I'm gonna say, the late 90s, early 2000s. A lot of steering wheels were made from lightweight materials. In the 70s and 80s, they were made of lightweight materials, and they had rubber padding, and they had rubber or padding on them to allow the driver to turn the wheel and stuff like that, lock to lock. And after the 90s, we got the radio button, and if there was a drink button, there was a drink button. Formula One was starting to, I think by the 90s, Formula One, early 90s, Formula One was starting to get buttons for brake bias, engine, fuel mixture, buttons on the display, buttons on the display. Around the 80s and 90s, when H-pattern gearboxes started becoming irrelevant, the racing Formula One cars got paddle shift on them, and they got the clutch pedal, because no one wanted a clutch because there was not enough room in an F1 cockpit. In GT cars, GT cars really didn't start getting multiple buttons on them until I'm going to say 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, when they started getting buttons for flashing lights. Sports cars, prototype cars started getting yoke-like racing wheels and stuff like that. They started to get buttons for traction control and flashing the lights, overtake buttons, and that sort of thing. Although sports car racing wheels are just kind of like Formula One wheels now. With IndyCar racing was always behind everybody else because it's just a bunch of guys driving on ovals and stuff like that. NASCAR, same thing. It's just a spoked wheel, just a spoked hardwood wheel with probably a button for the ignition and probably a radio to talk to your pit crew and stuff like that. Nothing really big. Sports cars, though, prototypes, they're starting to get buttons for brake bias, fuel settings, pit speed limiters are now a thing. I think pit speed limiters started becoming a thing in like the 80s and 90s because they wanted to slow down approaches into the pits. I think sports cars got that around the 80s, early 90s because they needed to abide by certain rules and stuff like that. Because you got to remember, in the 60s and 70s, a lot of the wheels had to be production based because most of the production cars, most of the GT racing was production, so it had to have the production wheel. I know for IndyCar racing, the wheels could have a left turning or a right turning pattern depending on what circuit and oval, so you could remind yourself to turn the wheel that way. I know that, but sports car racing wheels have all that. They have the paddles on the back. They have the liquid display that tells you gear, oil temperature, and all that other stuff. Shift lights that tell you so you don't break the engine. Formula One cars have a mess of lights on them. They have a mess of gauges on them. They have things to turn brake bias, turbocharger pressure, and energy recovery, stuff like that. So the wheel has come a long way, but has come a long way over the years. But and the other thing is the wheel to make a wheel has the cost to make a wheel for has not only extended to racing cars, they've also extended to road cars as well. Road car wheels, as I said, were always spoke. They were always wood. It wasn't until, and they were wood for quite a while. They'd have a small horn in the middle. It's either that or the horn would be on the side, or on a pole chain, some wheels actually had the throttle on them. Had the steering column had the throttle on them. And now in the 80s, everything started to get electronic. It wasn't until the 90s that cars started to get, wasn't until like the late 70s, early 80s that cars started to get horns in the middle of them. Started to get horns a little bit instead of just a little push button things. And in the 90s, cars started getting buttons for paddle shift and stuff like that. I know Toyota had a sequential manual in its MR2. You could push 2 buttons on the steering wheel and switch the gears, which is a little dangerous when you were driving. Spiritedly, paddles would have been better, but that's the other thing. A lot of road cars now have paddle shift on them. Now, it took, paddle shift's been around since the 80s on some F1 cars, and has also been on some road cars as well. I think Ferrari started that in the mid 90s with the F1, the 355 Bro, and that very rare though, and it became a prevalent thing in the 2000s when Ferrari, Porsche, Lamborghini, and BMW and all the Aston Martin all figured, this is kind of the wave of the future. We kind of want to make racing transmissions. So, and the technology has changed over the years as well. And the array of buttons you can have on a steering wheel has gone up. You can tune the lights, speed, radio, the shifting column actually on some automatic transmissions actually has a button that you can shift off on, and stuff like that. You have automatic with paddle shift with a manual function. You put it down into a sport mode. You can turn the track modes and you can shift with that. I know my father's Camaro has that and stuff like that. And it's also, and as you guys know, it also has translated into racing wheels as well. That's just thought I'd give you guys some more facts of that. I didn't want to be here for 24 million. I didn't want to be here for 24 million minutes, but the steering wheel has definitely evolved from that 4-spoked or 2-spoked design with metal and a shaft for a steering column and stuff like that. And the other thing is steering columns now have the ability to either to move up and telescope. I know they're starting to do that in race cars and stuff like that. Just like some cars, you can move the pedals back and forth to suit your driving position, and also talking about racing, you actually can activate your phone on the controls now on a lot of steering wheels as well. You can activate lights, and you can also make the lights and everything. You can set cruise control. Just the speed of your car. A lot of stuff that we have in race cars today got transferred over to the production line. And not only that, we also have, because when we put certain cars into track, sport, and comfort mode, the steering response will also change. So if a car's in regular comfort mode, it will steer quite lazily. If you put in touring mode, it will allow you to turn. If it's in sport mode, it'll dart a little quicker. But if it's a track or top mode or whatever you want to call it, we'll sharpen up the handling so you can go do whatever you want on a racetrack, and it also changes the engine, and the wheel is also good to change the engine response. So, but so steering wheels have come a long way since the mid. Since like the early 1900s and stuff like that. So it's definitely worth a look and stuff like that. So I thought I'd just give you guys a little synopsis on the steering wheel and how it's evolved. I didn't want to keep you guys here too long. So, but here's the Gear Change Show. I'm your humble host, Mega Mo. Here's a little synopsis on the steering wheel, and I hope you guys enjoyed something, and you guys can obviously look it up and see how the steering wheel has evolved over the years, and how it's helped us with, and how sim racing and racing games have sort of reflected that for those of us who can't drive, because some of us either are too scared or poor vision like I do. So I'm not scared, I just have poor vision. So but yeah, I'll see you guys later. I'll shoot a vlog tomorrow, and then I may upload some gameplay of tomorrow to make up for today. Thought I was, but I didn't. I'm gonna try to get up early tomorrow so I can actually have some fun. And on Tuesday, and I'm gonna have some fun walking outside because I've been losing. I'm now up to 14 pounds lost. So 14 pounds lost. So I've been lowest is 14 pounds, which is big. So which is big. I'm still keeping it down. As the weeks go on, I'm gonna keep losing more. So I will see you guys